I'm at an important conference right now as well, where just a wide scale support is being shown for the Uhuru movement. I think a guy named, of course, you all know Willie Mukasa Riggs, Afia and Mungaza, and so many other people have sent their support to Chairman and the Uhuru Three. So I just want to begin by saying, I just want to salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Chairman Omali Yeshitela's leadership. Want to confirm the theme for today, which is the message is still the same. In the African right to freedom of speech, while also underscoring what Sister Betty and Brother Ralph were just talking about, the fact that, freedom to the African, to the colonized person is illegal. So as we fight for the defense of the democratic right of freedom of speech, we underscore, of course, the fact that this notion of freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of political association was created at the expense of African freedom and not in support of African freedom. And that is the source of the contradiction, especially as American hegemony wanes. So that's why, to me, this talk in Huelva, Spain was so important. I mean, Chairman was the keynote there. And Chairman was the keynote there for the same reason why Chairman was brought to Oxford, England in 2019 to speak, not because bourgeois academia or say bourgeois nonprofit and NGO organizations have opened up and became African internationalists, but because of the fact that they know that American hegemony is waning, and there is a crisis of colonialism and the recognition of Chairman's leadership in the struggle for really the anti-colonial freedom of all people. So it's a very, very remarkable speech in that sense. We know that the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement organization that I was chaired was formed by Chairman Omali Yeshitela in 1991 to push back the counterinsurgency and defend the African community against the counterinsurgency that was placed upon African people to push us out of political life, right? So I just wanted to say that, and in that, we fight for the democratic rights of African people, right to political association, right to freedom of speech, freedom of press, all these things of which in the slanderous attacks against the movement, they're clearly saying that Africans do not have these rights. Something that stands out to me when I listen, that of course, like as we've noted, the same stuff that Chairman's being accused of doing, he was saying then. But I also want to make connections to two different things, right? I saw the film and immediately I'm thought of once again Oxford, the Oxford debate. No one's accusing Chairman of when he went to Oxford. Clearly, I mean, Oxford itself is older than the contemporary formation of the United Kingdom. Same with Cambridge, right? These are bourgeois institutions that have helped sort of create the modern bourgeois state, and that's also not being stated. Of course, but when you even see Chairman's opening in both speeches, like they're almost the same. It says about being in front of this Argus body. He mentions that. Then he also attacks United States imperialist, colonial capitalist attacks against the rights of colonized nations to have self-determination. But there's another speech that I want you all to go back and check out. Over 50 years ago, at the 1-year founding of Chairman Omali of the African People's Socialist Party in Gainesville, Florida, a speech that Chairman Omali Yeshitela gives at African Liberation Day in 1973. You can find an excerpt of it on the Black Power Talks podcast that we recaptured last year. In it, Chairman begins it by saying, there can be no peace while Africa is at war, right? So in many ways, for me, what really sort of in this defense of Chairman, the movement, is to understand that not only is this something Chairman has always been said, but the fact that this African internationalist anti-colonial critique of American empire, but also what needs to be done for African people to get free, is not just something that the party has always been pushing. The truth is that it's a politic that produced the party, and in some ways produced Chairman Omali Yeshitela, because you know, he was Joe Waller when he first started saying this stuff. You know, I've done the research. I got the receipts. The young people like to say, show me the receipts, right? Show me the receipts, show me the receipts. I got the receipts, you know, of the 340 some odd editions of the Burn and Spirit newspaper that exists going back to December 1969, there are almost 300 issues that directly, one way or another, speaks towards reparations. Reparations itself emerging in the anti-prison campaigns led by not the African People's Socialist Party, but the junta of militant organizations in 1971. So 1971, the very first surviving record of our political organ speaking of reparations. In 1969, the very first edition, and about 330 subsequent editions of the 345 editions of the Burn and Spirit newspaper speak towards genocide. Speak towards genocide. So when was it? Was it in 1971? Was it in 1969? But what's also filling in those pages is the fact, two things: that Chairman Omali Yeshitela's constant criticism of Russia, and it's a dialectical criticism, but that, as well as Chairman's underscoring that what Africa needs to move forward is an Africa plan, and that the only people who will liberate us are ourselves, African people, right? This why this Huelva, Spain speech, where Chairman was the keynote in 2007, is such a remarkable, such an important video for us to watch and to replay and to replay, because it completely exposes, you know, in 1953, 70 years ago, just a couple weeks from now, a couple days from now, actually, actually a couple months from now, Fidel Castro stood up in court defending himself and says, history will absolve me, right? July 26, 1953, they had something called the Raid of the Moncada Barracks. We know that this month is a 1-year anniversary of the raid against the Uhuru movement. Two different forms of raid which still speak towards the exact same colonial contradiction. So Fidel Castro in October of that year stood up in court and said, history will absolve me. But I'm here to say that this speech represents the fact that history already absolves us. Our history absolves us. Our history shows that we have done nothing different than what we've always been doing, is putting forward an Africa plan for African liberation. But it's underneath this same guise that the organization that I lead has been attacked, you know. You all have learned about the 130,000 Africans charged genocide signatures that have been attempted to be wiped clean, that disappeared from the internet, right? These are the people, once you talk about the lack of freedom of speech, right? You know, defense of freedom of speech, they wiped not just our words, but your words from the internet, right? Petitioning seen as some of the highest form of freedom of speech when you go to these bourgeois universities, but they wiped it clean. The FBI did, right? They thought they completely disappeared it, but you know, it's because of the unity of the people with the movement, with the masses, with InPDUM, with the Black Spot Coalition, with Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the Uhuru 3, that we recovered that evidence and have made it impossible for them to do what they want to do, which is to sort of wipe clean the slate, the history of struggle that we have had, and attribute it to anything other than our yearning for freedom, our yearning for African self-determination. So some updates, you know,
5 minutes.
Thank you. So some important updates that I just want to give you around that campaign. In April 2023, the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, as a member of something called the United Nations Anti-Racism Coalition, um, uh, uh, brought the Hands Off the United Nations panel of experts on law enforcement. We also held another panel of our own looking at the genocide that exists within the US prison system. This was on April 29th and April 30th. And then just a couple of weeks ago, in May and early June, we were there at the United Nations as a part of Hands Off Uhuru, as a part of Africans Charged Genocide, at the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. So it's just important for us to underscore, like I said, that there's this long history. I want to salute the Huelva Spain speech, salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and say hands off Uhuru and hands off Africa.